They realize that that's the lost girl asking for help, and they say, we cannot leave Cold Lake Falls until we help this
No,
girl.
don't go back.
It's been a cold case for years. No one ever found out. But the lost girl is begging for help. So they go to this town and they go to a library to do some research. They had one of the bits of clues they had found in like newspaper clippings and stuff within Cold Lake Falls was this high school like Letterman jacket for that neighboring town's high school, which is what sent them down there to do research. And they have like dates of when it was like 1976 or whatever that the girl had died, and so they just want to go see what they can find. Eddie has some information. They decide to go drive back to Cold Lake Falls, and April's shocked. Like, Eddie, how were you able to find all this information so quickly? Like, how did you know where to look? How did you know who to look for? How did you know what
Valid.
dates to look for? That sort of stuff. And he goes, oh, I just knew. Like, I'm just lucky. As they're kind of going over some of the evidence that they found, or at least leads that they found. And as they're in the diner, they realize that everyone's kind of looking at them because they are suspects in a murder and it's a small town and all this stuff. And there's one girl in particular who's a teenager who is just staring there in the next booth over and is just no shame
Oh, I just
staring,
got the chills.
no shame staring at them. And April, who is bold, and Ed looks at her and says, "You got a problem?" And this girl gets up, walks over to their table, sits down, and says, "Hi, like, I'm Beatrice, and I know you guys are looking for X, Y, and Z, and I want to help." And they're like, "Do you know anything about us?" She goes, "Yeah, I know everything about this town." And she's just like this little teenager, yeah, just like she had
Know it
volunteered at
all.
this, yeah, knows things, and is in the her family's rich, and like just kind of bored teenager, and gets into all the town drama. Beatrice says, "Come back to my house. I have a bunch of stuff you might want to see." And she's very normal, like they're like 27, and she's like 16. So they get to their house and she goes, "It's probably really weird for you guys to just be here. So like, just park on the side, like, and come in and." I would normally do this in my bedroom, but that's probably even more weird. So just wait here in the kitchen. Like she's just very cute. And Beatrice has oh, sorry, this is Gracie. And then Gracie has a sister named Beatrice. Beatrice is the older one. So Beatrice is like 18 and Gracie's like 15, 16. So Gracie and Beatrice are like this dynamic duo of like kind of little detectives of their small town, and they volunteer at the sheriff's office so that they can get leads on different stuff, and just kind of cute. And so they end up giving a lot of information with different police reports, and all of these dates are starting to add up, and they get this theory that the lost girl is a girl by the name of Shannon. Okay, so they have this pretty good lead that, and as they're doing this research, they find a friend of Shannon's. So they go and they question her. Do you know about Shannon? Is she the lost girl type thing? And she says, I don't know. Shannon had a lot of problems. She was addicted to alcohol and drugs, and she was kind of a troublemaker. But I know that when she had her baby, she did everything she could to get her life turned around, and she was really working on making some progress. It is brought up that, oh, hey Eddie, like, didn't your mom gave you up for adoption,
Oh,
right? Like,
ah.
and and Shannon gave you up for adoption, and so April asks Eddie about it,
How did I not see this coming?
and Eddie was like, "You don't think I thought of that? Of course I thought of that, but the timelines don't match up. I was a baby, this was 76. I would have been 5 years old, 6 years old, whatever, right when this happened. So it can't be me." So they kind of put
Oh
that
my
put
gosh,
that to
it's
bed.
him.
But it's like
He
this.
totally meant to go the way he turned. Ah!
But April trusts Eddie implicitly. They get back to Rose's house and they're just kind of going over stuff, and they're talking with Rose, and they get a knock at the door. They open the door, and it's Detective Quentin, and Officer Cal. Here's a plot point. Not a plot point, but it's something I forgot. Cal, this officer, had come to them in the night and thrown rocks at their window the second night they were there,
Off the clock.
off the clock, to kind of say, hey, what you guys are looking into, like, we've
Off
looked into
limits.
this, like, and we can't find anything. So just stay out of it. Go home. Be done. Stop looking into stuff. This sort of stuff. which they think is weird. But Cal's like a nice guy, and he's all like, if I can help, I'll help. But really, trust me, guys, we've looked into this. It's nothing. It's a dead end, and they just think that's kind of weird. So Cal and Detective Quentin show back up to the house, and Detective Quentin has done some research, finds, and then he's basically like, Eddie's here, April's here, and Rose is here, and he's just kind of laying out everything he's discovered about April and Eddie. One of the things that he lays out is, hey, I know that you're not April Carter, you're so and so. And just kind of, it was a thing that April was supposed to tell Eddie on her own time, and was kind of revealed by Detective Quentin. And so she's just so hurt, and Eddie is hurt and shocked. But then he reveals some stuff
About Eddie. Ooh, red flags.
About how he was discharged because he had a gun that was unregistered and he wasn't supposed to have it, and because he was seeing things, and because he was kind of quote unquote crazy, and that when he had been discharged from the army and came home, there was a span of time for about a week where he went missing and no one knew where he was. And that same week,
oh no,
was the same, that week that he was gone was the week that the last girl had died. I forget her name, whoever the last girl was. And so Detective Quentin says, isn't that funny that you
what a coincidence
were missing when this girl died, and that you're just randomly here in this town on your honeymoon, completely out of the way, and you just thought you were going the right direction. Like, doesn't really match up, Eddie. And so April learns all this stuff about Eddie's past that she wasn't fully aware of, gets the full picture. Eddie gets this full picture of April. Rose gets pissed. Rose says, F off, get out of my house.
F off.
You guys you shouldn't have tapped my phone lines, and da 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 da. And Cal's kind of nice and like, hey, Detective Quentin, like let's go, and it's kind of have Eddie and April's back a little bit. And Cal's always just kind of like just there, kind of under the radar, like watching things. So they leave, and Eddie and April have this moment of like, I'm there. It's just sad. It's a sad moment. And then April is shocked because she's like, how well do I know Eddie? Like, I've known him for 6 months, and I have no idea why this happened. I have no idea why he wouldn't tell me, but I know I didn't tell him my stuff. We all have our reasons, and they just have like this hard time dealing with it all. They go to bed, and April has just like this really bad feeling, like something bad is going to happen, and am I going to lose Eddie forever? She wakes up, and Eddie, they haven't spoken to each other, and Eddie says, I need to go for a run. He runs a lot. That's like his like thing. And April is pissed, and April's like, am I going to lose everything forever? And you know what? I'm done with this. I'm figuring this out myself. She gets in Robbie Rose's dead husband's car, and drives to Atticus Line by herself, and says, okay, lost girl, like,
come find me.
Come find me. Like, let's hash this out, homie. Like, I'm not afraid. And she has all this research about people dying, so she starts walking Atticus Line by herself.
No.
And she holds out her thumb and starts hitchhiking, right? Just to.
Oh no.
And as she's walking, walking, a car appears.
But it's not the black truck.
And not the black truck. No, because that was Max's, and Max is in jail. So a car appears and pulls up to her, and it's a lady named Trish. Okay? And Trish says, hi, like, you okay? And April says, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just, I'm headed to Hunter Beach. Maybe you can help me get there. And she's just she's trying to draw the lost girl out, and says to Trish, can you help me? And Trish is like, I'm not going all the way to Hunter Beach, but I can take you as far as I'm going. And April says, yeah, that's great. That's totally fine. So April gets in the car with Trish, and they start driving. And they're having like some small talk, and April's looking around the car and looks in the back of the car, very suspicious of, okay, who's Trish, and why is this here? And there's like some toys in the back, like indicating she has kids and whatever else, and she's talking with Trish, and then starts to get like a really gross feeling, and says to Trish, hey, you know what, like, and you don't have to take me. And starts second guessing her decision. You don't have to take me. Like, just leave me. You can just pull over here. I'll be fine. And Trish snaps. No, no, I can take you. No, I'd like to take you. I need to take you. I need to take you there. And she's like, what the heck? And Trish starts acting weird. So then she says, Trish, seriously, I'd like to get out. I'd like to go. And Trish won't say a word. And Trish is dead silent. And then Trish says, oh, you know what? I forgot something in like a very stone cold voice. It'll just be a minute. I just need to get it. And starts to pull over. And as she starts to pull over, April looks in the rearview mirror,
It's the lost girl.
and the lost girl's in the back seat smiling.
and
And and April has a panic inside of her and like freaks out, gasps. And Trish is just, it'll just be a minute. It'll just be a minute. Let me just get this thing. It'll just be a minute.
she's just sitting in
And
there.
and they're pulling over, and April's like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Trish gets out of the car. It'll just be a minute. Goes and pops the trunk, and April's like, no, no, like we're not letting this happen. This isn't gonna happen. So April gets out of the car, and Trish is nowhere to be found. And it's like, whoa, where did Trish go? And she's kind of walking around the car, and it's the Atticus line, so it's just covered in trees. She's kind of looking, Trish, and as she says Trish, she hears come up, and she turns, and Trish has a tire iron in her hand and goes to smack April with it, and April ducks out of the way last minute, and Trish swings again and ducks in the last minute and hits her in the arm and then runs, and then April just books it into the woods as fast as she can, just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs, and runs, hides in the woods, and is panicking, and it's like, what is going on? What is wrong with Trish? Something's happening with Trish. Something's going on with Trish. Oh my gosh. And Trish is like meandering through the woods with a tire iron. April, like, can I help you? Come here.
Out,
Like,
come out and play.
I need to help. And then all of a sudden, Trish is quiet. And she can't hear anything. So April, like,
No, don't move.
So April slowly works her way out of the woods and gets back and sees the car, and Trish is nowhere to be found. And then I can't remember exactly how it is. And then she sees Trish sitting by the car, like, or sitting in the car, something like that. I can't remember. No tire iron, and just sobbing, just sobbing. And April says, Trish, and grabs her and shakes her. Trish, like, you need to get her out of you. Like, don't listen to her. Don't listen to her. Get in your car and drive away and never look back. And Trish is like crying and starts her car and drives off. And April just books it down Atticus line, getting back to her car as fast as she can. Just runs and runs and runs and runs. April gets back to her car and drives and goes back to Rose's. And so
Now she's possessed.
No, she's not possessed. But she knows, oh my gosh, the lost girl is the murderer. The lost girl possessed Max Crosby. Not Max Crosby, he's a football player. Max Chandler. That's why Max Chandler doesn't remember anything that happened that night. And then all of these murders had been by blunt force. And like Eddie had said, why are all these murders blunt force trauma? Like, it's in the middle of nowhere. A gun is cleaner. How come it never happens? They were always asking, were you out hunting? And none of this. Why does this happen? And they realize, oh my gosh, the lost girl is possessing people and killing people, right? And having them, and they don't know why.
And we don't know if the lost girl's Shannon yet.
No. And we don't know much about Shannon other than it's similar timeline on when death happened. So they get back to Rose's. Eddie is there. Eddie is back, and Eddie's like, where have you been? So Eddie's pissed, but she tells Eddie everything that happened. And then they kind of have this conversation of, why didn't you tell me about your army stuff? Why didn't you tell me about your mom? And they kind of come to a decent place with it of like, you can trust me with everything. Okay, I trust you type thing. And they end up jumping in their car and going back to that neighboring town. One last time, we're gonna go look for Shannon's house, because they find a connection. Shannon's dad still lives in the town. I forget what the other town is called. And so they get back in the car and they drive, and as they're driving, they realize that there's a cop following them. And they're pissed that there's this cop follows them all the way back to the town. And they pull over, and the cop pulls over, and they just kind of like, wait, we know you're there, come on. And it's Cal who's following them. And Cal is like, what are you guys doing here? Like, why don't you guys just go home? You're innocent. Just leave. Like, stop digging into stuff. Just leave. And Eddie says, he's like, I'm just doing my job following you guys because you guys are suspect, or they're not technically suspects, but it doesn't make sense why you're not leaving. And so I need to make sure that you guys leave. And they basically say all their evidence, hey, we think it's the Shannon girl, and this is Shannon's dad's house, and we're gonna go question him. And Cal's like, no, you are not questioning him. His daughter died 20 years ago, whatever it is, 30 years ago, whatever. Um, and that's messed up. You just let it be. And they said, we don't
Yeah.
care. We don't care what you do. Like, we're gonna talk to this guy.
What would that be like if two just randos came to your door and was like, "Hey, we want to know about your daughter."
Right.
Like that is pretty messed up.
It is pretty weird. And so they say no. And Cal says, well, I'm a cop and I'm going to go talk to him because this is a lead for this murder, this cold case X many years ago. And if it is Shannon, then I'm the cop. I need to handle it. Fine. So Cal goes to the door, knocks on the door. Guy answers, and
Looks just like Ed.
no, but it's Shannon's dad, and they Cal goes inside for a second, and then he comes back out, and the guy shuts the door, and Cal says, hey, like, I've talked to him, he's helped me out. It's just let it be. You guys do whatever you want. I need to get back and go fill out my report because this is new evidence in a cold case. So have a good day. I'm done. And Cal gets in his car and drives back to Cold Lake Falls. And April's like, okay, Eddie, like, we can't mess with this. This is now like an investigation. And Eddie says, he's just like very calm.
Oh
And
no,
he says,
he's been possessed.
no, but kind of like it feels like she says it feels like that. And he's just like, just wait, just wait, just wait. And they're waiting and waiting. And then they see Shannon's dad come out, get in a car, and leave. And Eddie says, let's go. April is like, what do you mean, let's go? And Eddie just like bold faced, no shame, walks up, breaks open the window, and hops in the house. And April's like, Eddie, what are you doing? Like, we can't do this. You're not acting like yourself. What are you? And he says, I need to find this stuff. I know the stuff here. I need to find this. I need to, you don't understand. I need to find it. I need to,
Why?
I need to.
Why?
And she's asking, why? And he says, because she's in me.
And so she is.
And she says, what do you mean? And he goes, I don't know how, I don't know why, but she is in me, and there's something here I need to find. And starts looking, and he's going upstairs and rummaging through stuff, and sees this cabinet and gets this pit in her stomach again, and she goes and looks in it, and there's a photo album, and like a bunch of like just photos shoved in, and she pulls a photo out, and it's a picture of Shannon with the lady that her friend that they had seen, and Shannon is holding like a 5 or 6 year old boy. But the picture quality is bad, and his face is kind of turned, so she can't tell who it is. And she just has this feeling like, oh my gosh, is this Eddie? Is this Eddie? Oh no, is Shannon Eddie's mom? Is the lost girl Eddie's mom? Like, what on earth did Eddie, like, how is Eddie involved in this? Has Eddie been the one killing people? It doesn't make sense because the murders have happened for years, and Eddie's only 26, right? Like, or whatever, however old he is. So it's not like he could have murdered girls 15 years ago, what I mean? But she's having all these crazy thoughts. She jams the photo in her pocket, and he comes down and he has this film, and he goes, "Let's go, let's get out of here." They get out of there. They drive back to Cold Lake Falls. They meet up with Beatrice and Gracie, who had been like giving them tips along the way. They're the ones that kind of helped confirm, hey, we think this could be Shannon because of records. Anyway, they meet up with them, and they are gonna do some photo development, 24-hour photo development. I can't find anywhere, and they say, oh, the high school has a darkroom. Thank you for the photography class. Let's go there. I go, but it's summer, like school's out. And Beatrice is like, oh please, like I got a key. Whatever.
Small town.
Yeah, she can do what she wants. So they break into this school. They go to the dark room, and they are developing pictures, and they hear something down the hall, and they're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And Beatrice and Gracie hear it too, and they all hear it, and the noise is getting louder and louder, and they're like, this is going to be bad. If they come into, they're in the dark room at this point, was like, but if they come into the photography room, there's that light above that says development and process or whatever, so you don't go and ruin all the
Uh-huh.
photos. They're gonna see that that's on. They're gonna know we're here,
And they're gonna lose all the
and
photos.
we're gonna lose all the photos. We're gonna be caught. And they just hear all this muffling outside, and they're like, "Oh no, please!" And they hear muffling right outside the door. And they're like, it's almost like they can hear breathing just outside the door, and they're just waiting, but nothing's happening, and they're not saying anything, and no one says anything. And then the noise gets quieter and quieter and goes away. And they're like, what the heck? And they're like, how's this happening? And Eddie's like, hurry, hurry, just develop the photos, develop the photos. And then they hear a voice, who's there? Who's there? And it's the janitor who had come in. And the janitor comes into the room. Is anyone in here? And they're like, we're busted. We're busted for sure. There's no way. And the janitor just leaves. And they're like, how did we get away? They get the photos developed and they go to leave. And they look up at the light that says development in progress, and the light is off. And they're like, how is that light off? And they go and they kind of poke it, and as they poke it, it like completely falls, and it had been like, tampered with, like so that it wouldn't turn on. So when the janitor came in, even though that light should have been on, it didn't turn on. And so they're like, how did that happen? That is crazy. And they feel like, oh my gosh, it's a lost girl. And so they get these photos, and they're looking at them, and some of them are just, there's like 4 photos on this reel. There's nothing crazy, but one of them is a picture of Shannon and her baby boy, and it is Eddie.
100%.
And Eddie is like, oh my gosh, like this is my mom. The lost girl is my mom. And everything starts to make sense. Everything starts to fall into place of, we weren't here by accident that night. Like, your mom called you here. Of course, Eddie was not the murderer at all. He was never implicated in any of the murders, but he knows that, like, well, why was my mom murdering people as a ghost, right? Because she's possessing people. And they kind of come to their own conclusion that in her life, she was so torn and broken and sad and addicted and all this stuff, that's the good part of the ghost, which they then chalk up to her breaking the light so that they could get away with stuff and guiding them. And so Eddie kind of has this conflicted moment of like, how can I miss my mom and love my mom so much when I also know that she's done, the ghost of her has done these things, but we still don't know who killed Shannon. They get back to Rose's house, and they're like, let's just, I mean, this is as far as we can go. This is what we figured out. I mean, they give all the information to Cal, and they say, let's get out of here. And Shannon, April's in the bedroom. Eddie says, I'm gonna run out back real quick and finish this yard work for Rose.
No.
And he walks out, and April turns back around in the bedroom, and at the window of the bedroom is a man with a gun standing at the window. And
came out of left field.
yes. And all of a sudden, April hears a voice, and someone grab her shoulders, and the voice says, get down, and pushes her to the ground right as boom, 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 shots start going off, shooting into the house, and April's screaming, and Eddie comes running back in and ducks, and it is Shannon's dad, who they had stolen stuff from. And he's reloading his gun, he's coming around, and he's cussing at him. I know you broke into my house, and I know you took this stuff, and it's all out there now. There's no sense in hiding. So Eddie gets a gun somehow, or had a gun, military, I can't remember. And
military.
This guy, and so Shannon's dad, his name I forget, he comes into the house and they're shooting, and they're kind of having a standoff, and they're pointing guns at each other, and then the whole conclusion comes out. And he says, I know you're Shannon's boy, you look just like her, and all this stuff, and that makes you my grandson. And he's just kind of this old. He's like, you can shoot me. I don't care. I have brain cancer. I'm going to die soon anyway. So what's to stop me from killing you? And Eddie's like, why did you kill your daughter? How could you possibly kill your daughter? It wasn't supposed to be this way. We were out on Atticus Line, and she was trying to be better, or so she claimed. She was trying to be better for you, but she was just a pain in my ass, and I hated her from the moment that I had her, and she'd never been anything but a thorn in my side, and I got sick and tired of it. And it wasn't supposed to happen, but I killed her. And I don't regret it. And I'm glad she's gone, and she's horrible, and you shouldn't be on this planet either.
Oh
and
my
then,
gosh.
as all this is happening, Cal shows up, and Cal has his gun drawn, and he's kind of trying to neutralize the situation. And the grandpa, pointing the gun at Eddie, says, "Shannon didn't live, and I don't think you should either," and shoots. And then the chapter closes, and the next chapter opens, and you don't know what happened. And it's 6 months later, and April is driving her car down Atticus Line, and she says, "This time is different. This time I know where I'm driving, and we're heading back to Cold Lake Falls."
Were.
And Eddie is asleep in the passenger seat, and he lived. He got shot in the arm, and Cal had shot the grandpa, and the grandpa later died. And it was like a couple hours later. He didn't make it much longer in the hospital. And they did scans. It was confirmed he did have brain cancer. They had this confession. They had all this new evidence about Shannon, so they were able. And as they drove down Atticus Line, it was peaceful. There was no dark feeling. There was other cars driving on Atticus Line, and so Eddie's like, "I think she's gone. I think she's gone." So they get back into town, and Beatrice and Gracie are there waiting for them, and they have this headstone for Shannon, and has like estimates of when she died and loving mother and that sort of thing. And it's a sweet moment. And Gracie and Beatrice had raised money for him, and Rose is there. Oh, and I thought this was cute because they go back and they're talking to Rose, and April says, "I met Robbie." And Rose says, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Robbie saved my life that day." And that voice that had said, "Get down," and pushed her down was the ghost of Robbie. And Rose basically says, "Yeah, he makes himself known here all the time. He'll be with me until he dies." And we talk, and he feels bad for the way he left me, and I tell him he has nothing to feel bad for. But she basically talks to her dead husband, and it's this cute little thing.
For the way he left me?
Because he had a heart attack or something.
Oh, okay.
But he had a heart attack standing in the backyard while she was doing yard work. So someone really did see a dead body with her shoveling and thought, "Oh my gosh, she's burying a dead body in broad daylight." When really, her husband just died from a heart attack.
This was a coincidence.
And so there's one last person they have to see in Cold Lake Falls, and this Detective Quentin, because they're like, he would never believe us if we told him a ghost was the one murdering people on Atticus Line. He said that he was interviewing, because they said that Max Chandler was he had murdered Rhonda Jean, and he was in like a private hospital getting all this special treatment. And they were like, "Why is he getting all this treatment? He's a murderer," even though, yeah, low key he was possessed by a ghost. Well, Detective Quentin is wanting to talk to him more because the last murder that had happened before Rhonda Jean, the lost girl possessed that killer while talking to Detective Quentin, and started giving all of the details of all of the deaths, saying, "Here's where it happened, here's who did this, here's why it happened, boom, 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 boom." And Detective Quentin, this is not mentioned anywhere in the book until the very end, is like, there's no way for you to know this information. Like, you killed this person, but how did you know about the murder of this person 15 years ago, or this murder 10 years ago? There's no way. Detective Quentin knew that the lost girl was the murderer, possessing people and having them die, but he knew how crazy it sounded, and so he never said anything. And he was so intrigued when Eddie and April came to town, because they were the first ones to ever actually see something happen, and so he was trying so hard to figure it out. But he felt, now that Max is in this facility, I think I'm going to get a chance to talk to the lost girl again, your mom, and uh, and um, and you're welcome to be there with me when I have this conversation with her, because I think she's going to come. And Eddie says, "No, I don't want to be there. I don't want to talk to that version of my mother, because that's not the mother that I remember or I have glimpses, small memories of. My mother loved me, and my mother is the one who brought me here to help her stop this stuff, not the broken, sad, murderous ghost mother that I don't have any connection to." So they get in their car and they leave Cold Lake Falls and live happily ever after.
Grandpa. What's his name?
I don't remember.
Grandpa kills his daughter.
Yeah.
How did no one in the town like, "Oh, where's Shannon?" Like, how did this just like, it was never.
Good question. So, because she had gone to Hunter Beach, and because she was
a nomad.
she was a struggling addict person, and so when she left, no one really thought anything of it. They
Mm.
thought, whatever.
Just
But he
Shannon
did
being
file a
Shannon.
missing persons report a year later, and part of his story was like he killed her, he hid it, and then a year later filed the report saying, "Well, if she's not back, it's been a year. She's not back. I think she's probably missing because I just assumed she's crazy going to Hunter Beach and doing all this other stuff, and she'd be back eventually. And when she never came back, I got worried and filed the missing persons,
Mm.
right? And no one ever thought anything of it. That's where I didn't like the ending because the whole time it does a really good job of making you think it's maybe Eddie. I even thought it was Rose at one point. Detective Quinton's a huge suspect. There's another douche cop that like you don't even know, and then there's Cal. I didn't like that it was the dad. The dad is not mentioned at all. The entire book, he is mentioned in the final 3 chapters. Oh, here's the dad that were, and we stole his stuff, and here he is shooting at us, and oh, I did it. It was me, you know. And it was like, but it just never brought up the dad ever until the very last minute, and that's what I didn't like was the dude. What? And whoever the narrator was for this book, she did a really good job. Like it was weird because her voice for Eddie was like this, and it didn't sound very good. But she did a really good job at the intense points, making it intense. And the moment Lost Girl is smiling in the back seat, I was shooketh. I was so freaked out, like ooh, like it was really.
I did that with First Light Wins, where I'm like, she's suspicious. We're literally the back is like Evie Porter, but is it really Evie?
Aw,
You're like, I know things.
I'm like, I'm so good at reading characters.
the opening scene is also really creepy. I mean, every time, there's probably 3 or 4 throughout the book that's like the ooh, moments.
You did a great job at those.
Well, the narrator, she did a great job. Like it was very like
I literally got the chills at one point.
What's gonna happen? Like when she's sprinting towards the car in the middle of the road, or the
Yeah, that
smile
was
on the
freaky.
back,
Yeah,
or
that
even
was
the
freaky.
opening scene. The opening got me. I was like, oh my gosh, like what a way to open! Like this is 2 chapters in, and it's a murder, and that's how it happened. It was just intense. Oh, it was a good book.